Happy Friday and welcome into another episode of Cowboys Daily here on the Fan Arch Network. I'm Jett Beachum, taking you through a big day and a big weekend for the Dallas Cowboys. Preseason game number 3 tonight against the New Orleans Saints. One final chance for a bunch of guys on this roster to prove they have what it takes to make that final 53-man on Cut Day Sunday. And a final chance for the Cowboys to see what they have going this upcoming season. It'll be interesting to see who plays tonight and who doesn't, the latter almost being more important than the former. Again, if you see guys not playing tonight, they're either injured or the Cowboys feel so good about them that they are safe on that roster and do not want to get them injured. So it'll be interesting to see from the get-go who the Cowboys trot out there, because you will not be seeing starters. You will be seeing guys that make the team. And that's a big, big deal, because again, as we go through this final 53-man roster and who we're projecting, quarterback, it all starts with that. We've talked about it ad nauseum. Joe Milton and Sam Howell, your 2 to 3 guys. The Cowboys have a decision. Are they going to take 2 or 3 quarterbacks? I know they definitely feel good about both. I think fans and anyone that covers this team feels good about both. If they weren't together, Sam Howell's probably an easy shoo-in at number 2, but Joe Milton right now is my quarterback too. It just comes to the fact, do the Cowboys keep 3? Do they feel so good about 3 and want to keep Sam Howell off some other team that he stays on the roster, at least perhaps maybe even a practice squad spot? We'll see. But again, right now, I think Joe Milton is your shoo-in for your number 2. You'll see a lot of Sam Howell tonight, and if he plays quite well, don't blink an eye if the Cowboys decide to keep all 3. Running back, only one of them right now safe. You will not see him tonight, Javonte Williams. Again, you have those 3 or 4 behind him, Phil Maffa, Malik, and of course, Jaden Blue. I think Malik Davis, again, he's been listed over and over and over again as your 4th running back, but the Cowboys believe in Malik Davis. Again, I think that's a little bit of a smokescreen. He's been playing quite well as arguably your 2nd best running back that we've seen all summer. Jaden Blue, a guy that they love his speed, they love his versatility. Again, just needs to be a little bit more consistent. I think they keep those 3 guys. Again, it comes down to, do they keep a 4th running back? Do they stash him on the practice squad? Phil Maffa is likely going to be your 4th there, and that leaves Israel, and I think he's going to be a cut candidate, but it is what it is. So 4 running backs make it. I think 2 quarterbacks make it as well. Here we go, Hunter Lipke. Again, don't really count him as a running back. He's kind of your tight end fullback, but a lot of teams nowadays don't keep a position there. But Hunter Lipke is a guy that they love so much on special teams. They love his versatility. He's obviously carried the ball in the regular season. He's also blocked as well. Cowboys like what they have there, so this is a kind of a different team where they're going to keep a fullback. And Hunter Lipke, whether you put him at running back, tight end, or just give him the fullback designation, he's going to stay there. Wide receiver, no surprises here. A strong top 4, CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, Ryan Flanoy, and Kevontae Turpin. Again, now it comes down to, do they keep a 5th and a 6th? Jonathan Mingo and Camden Brown. These have been the guys that have been fighting over roster spots head-to-head. And again, I just think, in my opinion, they have played so well that you have to keep both. I think Camden Brown is going to be a guy that can make an impact this year. And Jonathan Mingo has shown that he has that versatility to do stuff on special teams. He's going to stay. And I just think that's the Cowboys. He was probably one of those easier cut candidates if you had coming into the season and this summer, but he has just played his way into this roster. And I know maybe he doesn't do too much, when it comes to receiving this year. And again, he's not going to see many touches anyway, given the 4 guys in front of him. But Jonathan Mingo has played quite well, and too well for the Cowboys to blink an eye. I think he's an easy shoo-in, and I think it comes down to, do they keep Camden Brown, or do they potentially stash him away on the practice squad if he does, in fact, clear waivers? Tight end, no ifs, ands, and buts about it. Jake Ferguson, your TE1. Brevin Spanford has moved up in that TE2. Luke Schoonmaker, a guy that, again, 2nd-round pick a few years back. He was kind of on the bubble this year going in, but he has played himself into a serviceable role, one where the Cowboys can trust that he can pass block, he can run block, and he can go out and catch balls if he needs to. But again, he's your kind of clear-cut number 3. After that, Michael Trigg, again, a guy that played well, but due to missing 10 days in camp with that toe injury, the Cowboys probably going to try and bring him back on the practice squad. Probably the best bet. It's just the way it is. It's just the way the numbers work. Again, there's going to be a lot of guys that you hear names that I've been high on, that you are probably high on, and that others, covering the team are high on, that the Cowboys just aren't high on, or unfortunately they just don't have the numbers. Again, because at the end of the day, it ain't like baseball, baby. Like there's a cap here, and it's 53 men, and you got to make hard decisions. At tackle, Tyler Guyton, Terrence Steele, obviously going to be your guys. TJ Bass, a guy that can go back and forth. There's a bunch of guys that they have behind there that are on the bubble, and guys that I don't feel super good about. And again, I've kind of mentioned my hesitancy with the tackle position. I think the Cowboys are going to have to eventually address this via trade or perhaps claiming someone else off of waivers that another team drops. Because guys like Trevor Keegan, Drew Shelton, Nate Thomas, Johnny Cornelius, you know, they just need to swing tackle. And I don't think any four of those guys can really do it right now for the Cowboys. I know Drew Shelton, they spent a fourth-round pick. We'll get into that more in a minute. But just hasn't shown, what the Cowboys saw, at least in the pre-draft process. Nate Thomas, he's been a guy that's been, on the roster for a while, but has he shown enough? I like a Johnny Cornelius personally out of all of them. I think he brings some versatility, but it'll be up to the Cowboys. I think if there was a position that the Cowboys need to address, picking it up from another team from a guy that gets dropped or picking up in a trade later on in the season, OT would probably be my biggest bet. At the guards and interior, again, I think the Cowboys are about as confident in the interior, especially their starters, as they are anywhere else. Tyler Smith, Tyler Booker, TJ Bass, Cooper Beebe. A strong four right there. TJ Bass, a guy that can play all three of those positions. Tyler Smith can swing out to tackle if need be. I'm sure he could play center as well. Same with Booker. So they feel really good about the versatility and the guys they have in the interior. I think that's one of your more a sure thing fire positions there in the interior. Let's go to defense again. And this is where the Cowboys have added a lot. Rashawn Gary, Donovan Iruzaraku, I always get the name wrong, Malachi Lawrence, Von Miller. Your outside linebackers, I think, clear cut, are going to remain there. Those four you feel fantastic about. Same thing kind of with defensive tackle. Quinnen Williams, Kenny Clark, Otito Obignaya, and Jonathan Bullard are the four guys that I feel good about. Jonathan Bullard, again, could be an IR candidate, a guy that's kind of dealt with some injuries. If you don't know, the Cowboys can kind of stash guys using the IR designation. They're out for 4 or 6 games, and they can come back, and then they can kind of decide what they want to do there. But that keeps them on the team. And again, LT Overton, again, a draft pick this year, has definitely played himself into being an important piece and a guy that can back up the Quinnen Williams and the Kenny Clarks of the world. And so I think he stays. Linebacker, interior linebacker, I should say. DeMarvion Overshown, D. Winters, Jay Sean Barham. I don't think anyone should be surprised. Those are the 3 names that have really come out in camp this year, and those are the 3 that are shoo-ins for the position. You have other guys, again, Maris Leofau, Sam Williams, plays more outside, but as has Maris being pushed out. It'll be interesting to see what the Cowboys do. You have Shamar James, Justin Barron, Curtis Robinson as well. Shamar, a guy they're high on. Justin Barron had one of the better days in camp this year. It'll be interesting. Again, this is kind of where you feel pretty decent about the guys here and there. I wouldn't say it's a position group that is above average. You have kind of a bunch of average guys that you feel decent about, and there's kind of this log jam there. So, I think a few of these guys, you're going to have to probably say goodbye to Marist or Sam Williams. I think I've mentioned that multiple times in the podcast. Shamar, I think, is a guy they eventually keep. Justin, hopefully a guy that they can either stash on the practice squad or just hope that, maybe he remains a free agent and they can pick him up. Okay, going to DB. A lot of DBs, and again, the one position group that the Cowboys really needed to get better this year. And they're relying on a bunch of guys that, are kind of going into their second or third season here. Deron Bland, obviously hoping to get back that pick six king mentality after a fantastic year, had a down year last year. Again, just been hampered with injuries, unfortunately. But Deron Bland's a shoo-in. Kobe Durant's in. Siobhan Ravel Jr., again, had a fantastic camp. One of the better camps, if not the best, out of anyone that anyone has seen. Definitely going to be a starter down the road. We'll see if he ends up starting over Kobe Durant, because I think Deron Bland's definitely going to be your starter. Kobe's going to be the next. And then we'll see what Siobhan Ravel has. Devin Moore, again, a pick there in the draft class, and one that has shown that he deserves to be on this roster. So those are kind of your cornerbacks there that I think feel good about. So you have 4 of those. And then let's get to the safeties, right? Caleb Downs, obviously your first overall pick, going to stay there. Jalen Thompson feels good about Malik Hooker, PJ Locke. I like Marquise Bell. I mean, he's a guy that, the coaching staff has been high on, a guy that's been on this roster for years, a guy that has flexibility there in special teams, which is something that, again, constantly Schottenheimer continues to preach on, and all teams around around the league are looking for. And so, if you play that game with Marquise Bell where you want to see if you can bring him back on the practice squad, I don't think that's going to happen. I think this is a guy that has proven he belongs on the roster at that backup safety position, a guy that can come down and lay the wood too if you want to put him at linebacker and experiment more with a more nickel concept there. But he makes it based on the fact that he's done work on special teams. And again, those are kind of my 4 to 5 that I like. Again, Cowboys go pretty heavy in safety this year. And let's see who's on the bubble, though, right? Let's look at these guys. Reddy Stewart, a guy that's done well this year. Kalen Carson. Probably if you were talking a year or two ago, you're a little surprised that's Kalen Carson because he was kind of one of those training camp guys that you just fell in love with. He's been okay. He hasn't really shown that. Amir Speed, fantastic name. Pretty decent game. Again, guys that you have shown flashes, right? If I had to pick a guy, the Cowboys probably keep Kalen Carson, especially what they've given as far as draft capital in the years past and what he's shown here and there. So Reddy Stewart and Amir Speed, I think those are 2 guys that are probably on your bubble and are probably on the outside looking in going to this final game. Julius Wood, a guy that the Cowboys have actually dropped in years past, was picked up by another team. Now he was back this year. Julius Wood's a guy that I can see them going to if they decide to keep him over Marquise Bell. And so that'll be interesting to see what they do at safety. But those are kind of the guys that I feel the Cowboys feel good about. It is worth mentioning, and I think this is a very important point for Cowboys fans. Oftentimes, obviously, when you drop a player or when you cut a player, right, to make that final 53-man roster, obviously you have a practice squad to fill out. If teams want to sign players to the roster, again, they can go and do that, but they have to clear waivers first. So the Cowboys are hoping that a bunch of these guys clear waivers that they want to bring back on the practice squad. Again, and 90 to 95% of that time that actually happens. I know sometimes you get these training camp heroes, these guys that Cowboys fans fall in love with, and they cut them, and you just think that you're never going to see them again. Most of the time, they end up making that practice squad, especially if the Cowboys want them back. In fact, over the last, 3 years, only 4 players the Cowboys have waived have been claimed by another team on that very next day. Isaiah Land, Eric Scott, Julius Wood, who we formerly mentioned, and Tyra Sweet. Again, you've had around 1 each year, so we might see 1 guy. So, maybe the one you fall in love with the most, he's the one that ends up going. Unfortunately, that's just how it is. But most of the guys are going to come back on this roster. And so I don't want Cowboys fans to fret. And if you fall in love with the guy, don't worry. There's a good chance that maybe he's at least stashed away, isn't going to play this year, but the Cowboys bring him back, and he's a guy that you continue to see in training camps going forward. All right, one thing that we like to do too, headed into this final 53-man, is see how the Cowboys draft class panned out. And again, we'll see that more on Sunday on who made it. Again, most teams, and you'll find this way, tend to keep the players they draft. I know that seems sort of obvious, but it's just the way it is, especially those top 3 and 4. So let's go down and look at this Cowboys draft class again. Caleb Downs, a shoo-in, likely going to start at nickel and at your safety. So fantastic pick, a pick that I'm high on. He was kind of my draft crush and one that I'm happy the Cowboys got because, again, just a fantastic and probably one of the better draft picks as far as slots falling and things like that the Cowboys have gotten in recent years. Malachi Lawrence, the other first-round pick, going to stay on the edge. Again, a guy they feel high about, a guy that's going to learn behind Von Miller, Rashawn Gary, and we'll see what he can do. Again, it's going to be interesting to see where he comes. Is he going to be kind of a third-down situational pass rusher? Because the Cowboys have them now, but you want to see what he has this year. And so there are going to be situations where we see Malachi Lawrence, and it's going to be really exciting. Jayshon Barham, I don't need to say much more about it. I think the Cowboys got a steal in that third round at pick 92. A fantastic linebacker, likely going to play himself into a starting role sooner than later, in my opinion. And again, probably not right off the bat, but I think by year's end, if you see some injuries and you see Barham just making flash plays, kind of like we saw with DeMarvion Overshown in his first year, or second year, I should say, it should be really fun. Here's where things get gritty, right? Drew Shelton, the OT at Penn State, 4th round pick. These are guys that you usually think are shoo-ins. Like the Cowboys, he's their first offensive line and only offensive line pick of this year's draft. Again, they didn't really add any offensive linemen this offseason. And so he was kind of one of their only ones, right? So they felt good about Drew Shelton enough to get him in the 4th round. Drew just hasn't played the way I think many fans and I think the coaching staff probably thought. Okay, and let's just be quite frank about it. He has not played up to the standard of a 4th round pick and a guy that belongs on this roster. But the Cowboys, that's where things get interesting because if you drop a 4th round pick, well, things don't exactly look too good. It doesn't. You're automatically almost saying that you didn't draft well this year, and you're making some concessions. But I think if Schottenheimer and this coaching staff lives up to what they've been saying, that they're going to keep the 53 best players to make this roster the best, you got to let go of Drew Shelton. Drew Shelton just hasn't been there. Again, the beauty is if he doesn't make it, he probably gets waived. And again, he doesn't get picked up on waiver wires. The Cowboys can probably bring him back on the practice squad and see what maybe he has over the season, and see what he can do maybe in year 2. Devin Moore, a guy we mentioned, I think he stays. LT Overton, round 5, pick 137, probably one of your great just late round picks for the Cowboys this year. I think he's been fantastic. Anthony Smith, the wide receiver out of East Carolina, 7th round pick. I just don't think he makes it. So the Cowboys right now, again, that's counting that up. 7 picks, I think 5 of those make it. Drew Shelton and Anthony Smith will not. Maybe Anthony Smith is a guy that they stash on the practice squad. They felt good enough about him to pick him with in their round number 7 because they didn't want him to get to that. They wanted the option to bring him on the roster and see what he had this summer. All the teams do that with 7-round picks. Unfortunately, Anthony Smith just hasn't done enough to do it. And guys like Marquez Valdez-Scantling that have shown what they can do in this league. Personally, if I'm the Cowboys, I keep him on the practice squad, and that's what I decide. So it'll be interesting to see what the Cowboys can do. Again, I think going through all this though, fantastic depth, right? Like this is a team that just hasn't had many guys, and a team that had flash players at certain positions. I've been going back to Micah Parsons, right? Now this D-line is better, in my opinion, just based on the amount of weapons, because they have guys finally at defensive tackle, and they have edge, and they have outside linebackers with a bunch of veterans and a bunch of young guys that I think are going to be able to shine a little bit this year. Again, it all comes down to what can the defensive backs do, and can the linebackers take that step up with some new exciting players. I think that's what it's going to boil down to, but we'll see who makes that 53-man roster on Sunday, and we'll have plenty more to say about it upcoming on Monday.